Good morning to everybody on the West Coast. Good afternoon, nearly afternoon to those on the East Coast, and to everybody joining us today to this Powering Business with Blockchain webinar series hosted by Ava Labs. My name is John Nahas. I am the Vice President of Business Development at Ava Labs. I'll be moderating and joining this conversation today. And we're really excited to be welcoming our partners at AWS to discuss all things Web3 related today. If you've tuned into these before, you'll know that the Powering Business with Blockchain series talks to key and instrumental people in the Web3 space, helping to bring utility and support our mission in driving forward a Web3 world. Previous guests have been Circle, MasterCard, Wirex, Lemonade, KKR, and today we're really excited to welcome the AWS team. So without further ado, I'd love to run through real quick and do a quick round of introductions. We'll start with the AWS side, and Jeff, if you don't mind kicking it off.
Sure, John. Thanks for that intro, and looking forward to this discussion. It'll be fantastic. So my name is Jeff Hasselman. I am the global head of Web3 for AWS. I've been here for a little over 6 years, building our teams out and building the business from scratch, essentially. So it's been a fun run, and Ava Labs has been a big part of that. So looking forward to the discussion. I'll turn it over to one of my teammates, Brad.
Hey, Brad here. So I am one of the Web3 experts on Jeff's team, and I've been fortunate enough to get to work with Ava Labs and excited to explore this conversation today and all of the incredible initiatives that we have going forward.
Thank you, Brad.
Why don't you kick it off next?
Yeah, nice to meet everybody. My name is Shai. I'm a global tech leader for Web3 and blockchain within AWS, and I lead the segment for our partner organization. I've been at AWS for almost 6 years now. Have had various roles and have been in the industry for a long time. Just really excited to dig into blockchain Web3 and all the capabilities it has for our future.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Pleasure to have you. We'll kick it over to the Ava Lab side. John, would you please?
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Wu, president of Ava Labs. I've had the pleasure to talk to a lot of the AWS folks for quite some time, especially Brad, for many years. And I cannot say how happy I am to be partnering with them because they actually get it. They've been on top of the Web3 trend far before many others have. And they are committed to making it easier to use applications and develop on Web3. And we're so happy to be partnering with them.
Nick?
Great. Nick Masalams, SVP head of product at Ava Labs. Been with the company since before the mainnet launch, and it's been a great journey. Been working with the AWS teams along the way. We did our initial launch on the managed validators in last March, and we've been working closely ever since. So we're very much looking forward to this conversation.
And just a quick reintroduction, John Nahas, Vice President of Business Development. I oversee the BD efforts across 6 verticals at Ava Labs, starting with institutional capital markets, enterprise, wallets and exchanges, NFTs, gaming, and DeFi. So very excited today, in particular, to be talking to the AWS team about how we can work together and how AWS is helping power Web3 and blockchain adoption, particularly when it comes to institutions and enterprise and government. So with that said, I got some questions for everybody and would love to kick off this conversation. I'll start with the AWS team. Question for you guys. First and foremost, how do you champion blockchain technology at AWS?
I'd love to take that one. So one of the cool things about Amazon is they empower our employees. And a line that I've used a lot is be the author, not the reader, when you see that blank page. And obviously, Amazon being a book company, I love to use that as an analogy. So when I arrived here at AWS, this is back in April 17, a couple months in, I was like, what are we doing to help support crypto and blockchain? I had read the Bitcoin white paper back in 2013, have been just growing in the business, learning, meeting people, different things on that side since then. So about 10 years now in it. But when I got here, I was like, how can we really drive and how can we support? So basically, as a night job, started building the business. What can we do literally from scratch, meeting companies such as Ava Labs, other companies within the industry, helping support them with the tools that they need. So one thing that we continually look for is building on our teams. How do we support? And I can't stress enough how Amazon and AWS really looks at that, supporting our customers, through their journey, how do we look at it as if we're an extension of your team? How do we build those items out? So from our side, it's just building programs that fit with the Web3 ethos, of contributing back to a community and so forth. So it's an area that it's near and dear to my heart, and definitely, I think all of us on this call have definitely looked at it as we've made a career decision here as far as where we think Web3 is going and how the internet's going to be redefined. How do we help that out? So I'll pass it over to Shai, but that is certainly an area this is a passion of mine, and you'll see a lot of people on our team have that same passion.
Thanks, Jeff. I think kind of in my life, who I see as champions, and to me, I have 4 kids, teachers are my champions. And so I think when you're thinking about being a champion in your organization, think about being a teacher. There's a lot of power in being an educator and helping educate other people and leading a community. And that's what I've done internally. And I talk to so many people that when they focus on teaching, it not only reinforces what you know, but it reinforces your relationship with others. You open up opportunities, you open up other avenues that you didn't know were there before because you're coming at it from an educator angle. So I always encourage people, right? Jeff had said a very important point. It's a second day job for everybody else. And so a lot of times as you're working with these people, really focus on that education and how you can help them accelerate the things that they're working on and how those things that they do every day relate to Web3. Because the reality is a lot of what we do in Web2 world is really very similar to Web3. It's not that much of a difference. So it's really about being that champion and that educator and teacher and helping them look around corners and really being the teacher and inspiring them.
Awesome. Great. With that in mind and thinking on the Ava Labs side, question for you, John and Nick, how does the AWS partnership help Ava Labs, Avalanche adoption? How does it help succeed on the technology side specifically?
I want to build on what Shai just said. Definitely the education is something that people have to understand what Web3 is all about. It's not just the crypto capital markets, which sometimes is different from the blockchain technology, but it's also important in terms of getting adoption to educate, but as well to make it accessible and easy to use. I think the overarching goal we all have is to make Web3 adoption as easy as possible. How do you bring the next 1 billion users on chain? How do you bring the next 1 trillion assets on chain? And the only way that this can happen is through education, as well as through the work together of infrastructure type companies like Ava Labs, as well as Amazon Web Services. So I think the next 1 to 2 years, we're going to be continuing to build tools together and create these on-ramps and services to speed up the adoption of Web3 and also introduce them through educational programs.
That's great. I'll just jump on to what John said, especially around accessibility. So, in our progression through the product lifecycle, where we started was kind of a single blockchain where people were launching applications. Where we've progressed to is this kind of thought around, rather than wrapping your business around the technology itself, really having the technology be customized to suit what your business goals are. And so what that means, it means provisioning a lot more custom blockchains to meet individual specific business needs. We call these subnets. All of the orchestration that needs to go underneath the subnet architectures and all the supporting services that make them work require a very strong, flexible partner who has high availability, elastic scaling, and high throughput systems. And so, AWS has been one of the predominant partners in that, and we've really relied on them since the very beginning to provide these services for us.
I'll jump in and add 2 cents to this as well, and kind of piggybacking on what Shai said in terms of the education, right? I think I often say when speaking to people, crypto people build crypto things for crypto users. It's a very small bubble. And for us to take Web3 and blockchain to the masses and onboard 1 billion users, like John said, we really need to move past that and start looking past what currently exists now and what's possible in the future. When people ask that simple question of how do you explain blockchain to your mother or your grandmother, my response normally is I do not. I don't try to, right? In the same way that I don't explain how Zelle or PayPal or Venmo works. Nobody needs to know that it's a Fedwire or Swift or SEPA or ACH in the back end being the infrastructure, the piping that lets capital move around. the blockchain technology just needs to be that background. And I think on our side, the AWS team and the technology there provides that known and trusted infrastructure that existing businesses, existing enterprises, existing institutions are comfortable with, that they rely on, and that they can take from the Web 2 to the Web 2.5 step to eventually the Web 3 step. So it's a natural progression to a world in which we think we can bring a lot of people on.
Hey,
with
John,
that,
John, one thing on that, I love what you said there, because it's something I've been asking for years to investors, to founders, to anything about this, is when does the term blockchain go away? It's just the underlying technology. This is how it works. It's similar to like my parents sending an email to me. 99.9% of the world has no idea how that happens. It's like, when does that become just the underlying technology? So I love how you said that. I think that's a very, very important point as we're educating people throughout this, because I mean, I can't reiterate enough. You've heard it on this call already. Education for teachers. That's how do we help develop, how do you get the next billion people into this world?
I think the best illustration of that is some of the biggest companies in the world run on AWS, but when you see the company name, it doesn't say so-and-so powered by or built on AWS, right? AWS is what enables that company or that product to go live. Ultimately, that'll become what subnets are, what blockchain technology is. It'll just be the company. You won't even know what's behind the hood. So we're looking forward to that future, hopefully in an accelerated pace, thanks to you guys and everything that you're doing with us. So, with that in mind, and kind of where
John, I have one just a quick way to think about that, right? Is it safe? Is it scalable? And is it easy to use? And when we can check those three key areas, right, that is the onboarding of the next wave of adoption. And I'm very enthusiastic by seeing the ecosystems build and develop that we're going to get there.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that in mind, the AWS team, how are your customers using blockchain technology today? Like, what does the landscape look like from your side and from your partners and your clients?
Sure, I can try to take that one, right? So I think when we look at blockchain and Web3 use cases, right, there's a very wide gamut. So I'll start kind of what we're seeing traditional from the enterprise and some of the traditional track and trace use cases. Track and trace, remember, it refers to the ability to be able to track the past and present locations of all products in a full inventory, right? Be able to see the whole history of the product and its custody throughout that whole entire life cycle. It's often a challenge from a lot of supply chain customers when we talk to them, due to things like outdated processes, outdated paper that they have. Sometimes there's disjointed systems as well, right? That ultimately slow down the communication. The lack of data compatibility in these systems as well also exposes supply chains to problems like visibility gaps, some of their challenges with inaccurate supply and demand predictions as well. And then you have errors in counterfeiting and all kind of compliance violations that are in the process as well. And so blockchain is a key part of alleviating that. On the other side, right, when we talk about government use cases and we look at digital identity as an example, it's one I'm particularly excited about, because that's really about a proof of ownership, right? Proof of transfer. There's benefits there around disbursement and management, right? Violation of credentials, documentation that you might have on chain, or documentation around security and privacy, which is critical for many of those use cases. So I think that's really the goal, is about enabling a lot of these use cases with features like confidential compute as an example, or other security technologies, for example, encryption, to enable other services, things like ZK Sync, and all the exciting stuff that's happening there. So I think that's really about understanding all the different use cases that are available in this space. And then ultimately that builders are still building in this space, right? There's so many exciting new things that we see all the time, from really focusing on making node access easier, and making it easier to get that data off chain. That's such a critical need for developers. And then ultimately, now you have that data, how do you marry that data with off-chain data and data warehousing use cases? So it's just really exciting to see all the evolution in this space on enterprise, government, startups, and everything in between.
Let me piggyback a little bit on Shai there, just with just more of a general comment. Like, in our role here at AWS, being a global company, it's very, in the position that we sit into, is with our customers all over the world, the use cases that are taking place and haven't been in this world for a while. just how that's evolved. When you go back to like, even back to 13, 14, but more so like, let's say 17, 18, 19, those vintages, as far as the companies that were being built and what those use cases were, you're actually seeing execution now. And I think that's the part. So there's a broader things to how our customers, what's real versus what's noise. And that's something we could spend hours on that topic alone, as far as where things are going and where it's advancing. But I can't reiterate how global this is and just the different pockets where these are picking up and where it's taking off. So Shai hinted on a number of things. There's more beyond that, but it's really that's the beauty of the global aspect of what Web3 and what this world brings. And Ava sits right in the heart of that with Avalanche. So looking forward to just seeing where our partnership goes and how that leads on.
I'll just jump on top of that a little bit, just from like a use case point of view and a product point of view. We're really seeing kind of these blurring of Web 2 and Web 3. He talked about data warehousing and that connection to blockchain ledgers, right? That's one thing. We're seeing a lot of like authentication systems that are more traditional due to the complexity of seed phrases. And so, removing the complexity of the seed phrase, but still having the underlying blockchain technology underpin all of the benefits that are what are needed, which is really comes around the fact that you need things that are, very reliable, decentralized, and immutable. So, you're getting into like forging and counterfeit, and these are the things the governments are spending so much money fighting against. So when you get into things like public records, right? People ask me like, what are the obvious use cases for government? Well, anything that's a public record is rife for blockchain technology. So, that's car titles, property titles, government benefits, birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, right? All those things go through this process today, and they're so heavily forged and counterfeited. And once you have an identity, then it opens, a lot of opportunities for fraud, and then that costs everybody a lot of money, and that's our taxpayer money going to waste. So, these use cases are all being explored right now, but they're being explored in a way that's kind of blending Web 2 and Web 3. So as people generally, kind of enter the technology from both an enterprise and a government point of view.
Thanks, Nick. We're talking about taxpayer money going to waste. We can take a tangent on this call and talk about that for the next 3.5 hours, and then come back to right where we started. But to that point, Nick, you're talking about kind of the things that are possible, where we could go. But let's drill down a little bit on the tangible, and want to hear from you, and of course from John, on the ways that Ava Labs is working with AWS to support Ava Labs' success and the expansion of the Avalanche platform.
Who is that, for Nick or myself?
Yeah, John, you want to give a big picture, and then I'll kind of
John, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I want to tie all this back, with a specific example. A tangible way that this partnership is going to make things easier for people is simply, how do you run a validator node right before this partnership on AWS? There are all these tasks you still have to do. You have to find the right size EC2. You have to find the right disk based on your state. You have to do backend scripting in Python to launch certain nodes. And then when Ava Labs and Avalanche launches updates, you have to rescript and update that as well. So for your grandmother, John, if they want to run a validator node going forward, she's not going to want to do all that. She's just going to want a one-click answer, just like she has with everything else in life. And this is what we are working with in terms of AWS to provide. And then ultimately, and I know Nick's going to want to talk about this, the one-click subnet. And we can talk about how a company like Shrapnel is going to benefit from the similar experience to your grandmother from running a node.
So exactly. So John, so as we go into 2023, our primary focus is, how do we remove the barriers? How do we make it more accessible, really, for the builders in order to get the user adoption? And so, that really gets into removing friction that's associated with running Web3 applications. And so a lot of the efforts that we're putting forth in Subnets, in launching Subnets as a managed service, all this infrastructure sits on top of AWS. And our focus is really on the orchestration of that, to make sure that the builders aren't focusing on all these pieces, right? The RPC endpoints, the API endpoints, the VMs themselves, the precompiles, but they're really focused on what their business use case is. And so by deepening our integrations and a lot of the automation on top of AWS, we're really abstracting a lot of the complexity associated with getting your application to market and understanding, if there is a total addressable market, and that the technology can work in a way to create efficiencies. especially at the enterprise and the government layer.
I'll piggyback on what you both said. I think, John, you highlighted the practical ways that this partnership is beneficial. Making it easy to launch validator nodes, eventually making it easier to launch subnet. I think all these things are a natural progression to bringing more people and more users, and particularly enterprises, institutions that don't want to deal with it. And as Nick mentioned, I think we've seen this in the past, right? When blockchain applications that have launched on a chain or another chain get too big for that chain. And that in and of itself highlights the scalability problem that existing chains or single monolithic chains have. If one application can clog up the whole network, imagine dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of applications running there as well. And we've seen this happen first and foremost with games, right? I think you saw a game, who I will not mention, go and try and create their own chain and have a lot of technical and security issues. When I talk to partners, this is exactly the story. Their job, if you're a gaming company, right, your job is to build the best game possible, the best user experience, the best player experience, right? Because you're a game developer. You're not a decentralized systems expert. You're not a blockchain expert. You're not an infrastructure expert. You leave the infrastructure and the things that matter to those experts and to the technologies that can help you as a business owner, as a developer, create the experience that you want. We believe that's what subnets are, right? We call them app chain, application specific chains. Our good friend Harold Boss, head of innovation at MasterCard, calls them business specific chains. Some businesses need their own environment, right? A government for sure is going to want its own environment. So to me, this is the perfect way to set the table so that anybody with an idea, a product, a vision, particularly enterprises and institutions that need their own sandbox, that need their own rule sets, can do this and benefit from the subnet architecture and deploying it on AWS. So
I'll give another example. I just got off of a business development call with not a gaming company, but a company that was thinking about deploying a subnet on Ava Labs, Avalanche. They had this long checklist of questions, questions like, how do you choose your validators, number of validators, which wallet would we want to use? Do we want to use the Ava Labs core wallet, or do we want to use someone else's wallet? How about the RPC provider, or how do we index this stuff? And then on top of that, it was like, well, given the throughput, what's the right VM? Well, between Ava Labs and AWS, we're going to create this dashboard that allows people to do one click of a subnet, and they can choose off their choices based on guidance from previous call it projects or companies, and instantly come up with the answers for them. It's almost like a common app for colleges, and you can just do it so easily. This is what making it accessible. And then instead of me or John having to do these calls with these third parties, suddenly you can just go to the dashboard at AWS and it'll figure it out for you.
In fairness, I do the calls, but then Nick has to come and explain it anyway. So this is going to take things off at Nick's plate. That's for sure. Nick, just building on what John said, like the one-click subnet and things of that nature. Talk us through what that looks like, right? Like how, where are we now? Like what does the current workflow look like? What does the current time look like? And then with these solutions, how big of a change is this?
Sure. I mean, so as we've launched more and more subnets out, what we're seeing is that there's a large base that wants a very similar configuration, who are trying to achieve similar things. And so we're going through and streamlining the process so that the number of validators that they need, what the test net looks like, what are the right configurations at the Genesis file layer, do they want precompiled, all these kind of deeper technical questions, we kind of just bring them up to a starting point rather than have them have to start from a blank paper. And that we're finding that that's really increasing the time to market. And then we go through, and as we go deeper and they get further and closer to releasing into the market, we can start to make tweaks around things that aren't necessarily right. But it's really about giving them basically provisioning decisions and the ability to make that happen in an automated fashion very quickly, rather than having to go and manually tinker with every aspect of what it takes to have a successful Web3 application in the wild.
Great. So to the AWS team, we're talking a lot about how we're going to deliver this potential future and what we see happening and how this is all going to benefit Web3 and blockchain adoption. But would love to hear from you guys. and particularly the feedback that you get from your hundreds and thousands of clients. What does hold most companies back from adopting blockchain? Of course, we're going to talk about the tech piece. We've been talking about the tech piece, but aside from the tech piece, just overall, what are the main things and the main pain points that are holding people back?
Yeah, maybe I'll kick this one off and then let Brad and Shai jump in too. But there's a couple ways I look at this, and we as a business have been looking at it. Obviously, the startup, younger company, that community is what's been building this out. So again, education is a big theme here. I will say the last 12 to 24 months, the number of conversations I'm having with the largest banks, the largest media and entertainment companies, our biggest customers on AWS, they're coming to us with, we need a Web3 strategy. What do we do? And it's like, pretty much, I think all of us on this call, within like 1-2 minutes of that conversation, if they're at the 101 level or the 401 level. And the way we look at it from an AWS perspective is, if they're at that 101 level, we need to educate. I'm not going to be putting them in front of a company that can help them with a wallet or something at that level if they're an enterprise, because they're going to take 6 months of that startup's time. So we want to make sure that what can we do to help educate them? So we're working through a lot of things, understanding what is it that they're looking for, where do they want their strategy to evolve? And these are different types of questions and insights that we're getting from them to help them out and lead that. And then you have the others that are at the other end where they're ready to go. There's a number of customers that we have on that front where they're ready, and it's like, wait, we want to have a wallet. Who should we be working with? What are the companies we should be talking to? So there's a ways that we're definitely making those connections and understanding that. But with that, you're getting to understand where the holdback is, and it really comes down to simplicity. We've heard education. How do you simplify? What do you do? Nick was going on, how do you make this easier? John mentioned also, like, what's that one click to where our grandma can hop in there and do something? That's when we start getting to that point, that's where things are going to start to move forward. We're seeing that building going on right now. This quote unquote crypto winter that we're in. Crypto winters to me are, yes, the prices are down, but builders aren't. Builders are coming, builders are building, and that's what's going on. It's like, what are we learning from those customers? The big thing on this is an Amazon principles. How do you work backwards from those customers? Understand what their needs are and go solve it. What are those pain points? So, that's on a broader view. I'm happy for Brad or Shai to kind of opine beyond that, but just this is where we're starting to see a shift. We're in that inflection point right now where things are changing as far as more and more people are coming in, but how do you grab them and how do you make this simple for them?
Sorry, before I get into the technical part there, I want to call out one other business benefit, right? So the big deal, a lot of customers just have a challenge with the procurement process alone, right? So you find a solution you want, understanding, does it pass your InfoSec rules? Does it pass your procurement rules? Does it pass your documentation rules and legal and all this stuff? And I think that's one of the biggest benefit of the partnership is for our customers that are going through that procurement process, they can deploy their validator nodes or read-only nodes, whatever they want to deploy, the subnets as well through the AWS marketplace, through an API. And I'll get to that cool part in a second. But all the paperwork and everything that you need is already done for you in the back end, right? And so when you work with your InfoSec team to explain to them what this blockchain solution is that you're trying to deploy on an Avalanche subnet, you can highlight the fact that the solution, the offering has been through a foundational technical review. It's been through that process as part of the AWS partner network that, as a builder, you can then pass on that foundational review and the results from that review back to your InfoSec team and give them that assurance that it's been through that life cycle, just like any of the other thousands of products that are deployed daily in the AWS marketplace. So I think that really ties into what Nick was talking about, and John, you were talking about it too. From a developer challenge, there's just so many things that we have to do as API is hugely empowering. That's what builders are expecting today, right? They don't go and look for random libraries and try to build things from scratch. A lot of builders and engineers will go out there and they'll look for an API and they'll say, is there an API for that? And they'll sign up for that API or they'll use a free API from somewhere. And so that's the level of simplicity that developers have come to expect. And that's what really the marketplace is offering, is that ability to use that API within your application, to roll it as subnet, and then just focus on building your really cool application.
I just want to piggyback on this really quickly. So and to that point, right after you get through the infosec and all the vetting that the AWS team has done, Ava Labs has created an implementations team, right? Because a lot of people are coming, they're saying, hey, we kind of know what we want, but we're not sure what it looks like. And so, we created a human team that they can reach out to through our BD department, which we'll just sit down with them and say, okay, what are you really trying to do? And then we'll start to try to answer some of those questions for them rather than kind of have to figure it out on their own. And so, there's a team who's dedicated, and we have channel specific ones for enterprise and for government, who's really focused on solving those problems with people who have a lot of experience in that area that have progressed over and transitioned to the Web3 world within Ava Labs and are marrying these two things together. So, we're really just trying to remove the barriers as much as possible technically, right? We're very focused on that, but also kind of in the planning phases and working within various organizations.
We're talking about all these potential solutions and all the ways that we're supporting each other and supporting both our builders and AWS clients. I think it's important to take a step back and kind of look at the totality of the opportunity here and what's possible with the AWS team. Brett, I know you spoke about this amazingly when we did our Twitter spaces, but I think if we could, just for those listening today and for those that are interested, to kind of unpack the entirety of this, right? What, if you don't mind just walking us through quickly, what is the AWS Marketplace? What is the partner network? What is AWS Activate? And how are we looking to build beyond that with like hackathons and events? Just the totality of what's possible between the two of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is what makes what we're doing so impactful, right? So firstly, right, Ava Labs, Avalanche have built their serverless architecture on top of AWS, right? So we have this relationship where we both deeply understand the integration points of each other's technology, right? So from the technology partner perspective, right, adding subnet deployments, hitting on the few click or one click that we talked about, leveraging Marketplace, right, which is a transactional procurement vehicle for individuals and institutions to launch those subnets. It makes it easy, it makes it safe, it makes it scalable. Having the opportunity to distribute the validators across the different regions and across different availability nodes increases robustness, right? So on the technical side, we have those pieces. Now, we've talked a lot about that, so I want to open up the business piece of this, right? So on one hand, our announcement, right, that we went to market with was about the partner network, right, and the Activate partnership, right? These are two BD and go-to-market initiatives that we've collaboratively worked together on to build this multifaceted partnership. So let's first talk about Activate, right? This is a program that helps startup build and scale by providing different tiers of credit packages, resources, tools, and experts, right? This is an excellent resource for developers to bring their applications to the masses using Avalanche's technology, security, scalability with AWS. And from the Activate program, right, we have different initiatives, right? One of those is the Activate Provider Program, similar to a perks and credits from some of our most successful programs, right? In this program, right, AWS will be providing credits and resources to the developers of Avalache. We're also working through hackathons, right? So we're going to be participating and sponsoring packages for the finalists, right? We also have a relationship on the investment side of Activate, right? Because of the Blizzard Fund and the investment side of Ava Labs and Avalanche, we have an incremental relationship where we offer higher credit packages and enhanced support for those that have also become equity investments through your investments.
Maybe I'll add a couple of things to what Brad said too. On a big scale, when you think of like Ava Labs, Avalanche, AWS is agnostic when it comes to layer ones and layer twos. However, we spend a lot of time understanding where developers are building and what they're doing. And that's where this partnership is so strong. Just knowing the team that Ava Labs has created, it's world-class, it's technical. You can hear from what Nick was saying earlier of how detailed they're getting. This is very important when we look for long-term as far as success. It's critical to understand when you're a builder out there looking to build on a particular chain. How do you do that? Where do you want to go to know that this is going to have longevity? And that's something where when we make decisions like this, as far as our partnership with Ava, it's how are we looking at to support the developer ecosystem? Where are we giving that? The programs that Brad mentioned are super important. It gives you those tools. Again, how do we simplify your process to create whatever it is you're trying to create? And there's so many places where that can go, but what can we do to help that? And working with a partner like Ava makes it that much stronger, to where that now with both of us supporting you as a builder in that world, you can go wherever your mind takes you. And there's so many different ways where we can help you out, open those doors down the road, not only through technology, but also what other business doors can we open up. So these programs are just kind of that entrance point as to how to get in. But then beyond that, our support teams that help you out as you're building that goes so much farther. So again, this is a very important announcement that we had with Ava. But again, we've been doing a number of these things even before the announcement. So it's like, I'm excited to see where this goes. When we have this conversation in 6 months, 12 months from now, what has taken place on Avalanche, and see where the creativity takes us.
Well, a testament to all of that is if third parties need more proof in the pudding. I think somewhere this was already mentioned, but Ava Labs is building its own SDK through AWS infrastructure. So, Nick and his team have chosen AWS, and through a lot of diligence, they did that. So I think that's enough testament to any third party in terms of how we think the capabilities of AWS, their knowledge of Web3, and how highly we think of AWS.
On the business development side, I'd like to add that having this support and this entire basket of tools to help builders and developers is invaluable, right? So on the BD side, we do a lot of helping, particularly in targeting great teams, great builders, great projects that the ecosystem needs, the ecosystem wants, and most excitingly, things that don't exist yet, right? New and novel use cases. And the BD team supports through grants. We support through technical assistance from Nick and the implementations team. We diligence a lot of our partners and anybody that we interact with on a regular basis. And if these are some great companies, Blizzard, our ecosystem fund, of course, invests in it. So not only do we have a lot of tools at our disposal to help builders and participants in the ecosystem, but now we also have the benefit of our friends at AWS through the credits, through a million other things that can expand their network, that can expand the resources that we give to partners building on Avalanche. So my DMs are always open, everybody. Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever. We're always happy to help anybody who's looking to build on Avalanche and support with AWS. So Nick, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to build on that too, right? I know we talked about all those benefits, whether the partner network or the marketplace or Create. Where do you see? I mean, they're all exciting individually, but where do you, on your side, on the technical side, get the most excited? Can't hear you.
Sorry, I was on mute. So for us, it really comes down to just solving problems, right? That's where the product team gets in. And so, when we went out and we talked to a bunch of cloud providers, we really were embraced by the AWS team. And Shai and I have been working together for a while now, and it was really like we didn't necessarily fit into the box. It was very early. I think we've matured a lot since then, but we weren't pushed away as a result from that. It was like, okay, let's work through each of these problem sets, right? Even just manage validators, which I think is probably the most common and simple use case at this point, down to something as complex as, hey, let's launch a subnet with a custom VM with custom precompiles that's now attaching in like verifiable randomness on chain, right? So you get something that's more of a gaming example. It's very specific. And all of it was, okay, well, let's work through each of these problems together to figure out if we can get a solution set that fits into our underlying architecture. And our teams are already doing it, right? They're just doing it themselves. But then when the AWS team comes in and says, hey, here's best practices, here's how we can help on the orchestration, then you get something that's more powerful than any individual working together. And that's really propelled us forward in our Subnets conversation and really allowing, custom blockchains to become a real offering that people can get today.
Nick, like I love the way you said that, because that is like like when you think of Amazon, that is really how do we support those builders to make your life easier? And support is such a big focus for us. That's where we put our resources into supporting you as a builder. How does that look at? What can we do? What tools do you need? And then I said it earlier in the discussion, it's like, how are we an extension of your team? What can we do to be on that side? And that's what everyone who's on our teams has been tied to startups in some way, or companies building in some certain way as far as where it is. And that to us is like, we know the pain points you're going through, so we can kind of relate to that. And then that's where we can take it to the next level. What can we do to get you to ship your product faster? How do we move to that side? And then how do we find customers to then use that product? Like, what can we do on that? So that's where we look at this as a whole, like an entire partnership as far as when we're working. And to your point, we'll work with the two girls in a hoodie starting off and help them identify where are they going with this. Maybe they need funding. We can introduce them to the Blizzard Fund or other funds. There's a number of ways that we can help out. So it's like, what are we doing to help enable those builders build? And that is, and again, this is a global approach. So this is not just we have one team here or a little team there. It's like we've been doing this since we've started created the cloud with AWS. It's this area of how do we help those builders build that support. I can't reiterate enough how much that we're trying to support that, and it makes me feel. I mean, we've had a lot of discussions between the two teams here, but I'm really happy that you said that, because support is so important when you come to this, because builders need help. They need tools.
Absolutely.
So kind of packaging this all in as we come close to the end of our time today, I just wanted to run around to everybody and ask, to you individually, what is the most important piece of this Ava Labs and AWS partnership? I'll kick this off because Jeff just said something that got me excited, and of course on the BD side is that AWS is an extension of our team, and we are an extension of your team, right? This is a two-way street. We can't wait to bring you guys partners and to be there to support all the partners in your side. So on my end, that's the most exciting and important piece. But would love to get just a quick tidbit from everybody on what they believe the most important piece of this is.
I think from my end, I love it when we can create something that everyone benefits, and this is really a win-win-win. So obviously Avalache benefits, AWS benefits, but third-party developers will really benefit. And ultimately, that's what really gets me excited.
I'll jump in. On my side, it's really about making sure that all the announcements and the marketing is backed up by real world implementations, that we are actually able to do everything we're saying, that these just aren't just not media for media's sake. This is real things people can go and use today, and then working through the details and just pushing that forward, really pushing the envelope on what's possible within Avalanche on AWS. And so that's the piece that I really think about on a regular basis.
I'll go next, and I'm most enthusiastic to continue to engage with the builders and the developers, and just see what is now possible that was never possible before. Bring these incredible new creations to life in a meaningful and scalable way.
So I'll add there. So as builders, right, remember we need tools. We need tools to make our life easier, right? And the blockchain and blockchain nodes are just the foundational layer, right? And so what I'm excited about is when you accelerate that foundational layer, what then happens is all the builders and partners out there building really awesome tools on top of Avalanche can just focus on building better builder tools that make it easier for me and other builders to build cooler applications. So it's really that network effect that goes beyond the foundational layer of blockchain and really impacts every single layer above that and accelerates every single partner and builder after that. And that's what really just gets me fired up.
And I'll close out with, I think Ava Labs' mission aligns very closely with ours on this. We're trying to help enable developers to redefine the internet. And this partnership coming together is going to afford that ability to a lot of builders out there. And we keep seeing them each and every day. But again, I can't stress enough. You're out there as a builder, you're redefining the internet. And that's what this is all about. And I think that really aligns between the two teams here as far as where we're going. And I cannot wait to see what people come up with as time moves forward.
Jeff, that's an amazing way to bring this home. I don't think we can really top that. I did have a couple questions left, just in terms of what are you guys excited about? We've covered that for sure. And I was going to ask the team at Ava Labs what we can expect next from this partnership, but I'll leave people in suspense after all the great things we've talked about today. So I urge you all to stay tuned, see what's going to be coming over the next couple of months. I wouldn't be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to say that we'd love for all the participants here today and those watching to join Ava Labs, AWS, and the larger Avalanche ecosystem at our second annual Avalanche Summit. That'll be taking place on May 3rd to 5th in Barcelona at the Poble Espanyol. If you were there last year, you know how fantastic it was. And if you weren't, you definitely missed out on a great time. So we welcome you all to join us for the second Avalanche Summit. And stay tuned for some great news coming out of both of our teams. Very excited for everything we have going on. And I want to thank you, Jeff, Brad, and Shai for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. John and Nick, as always, it's great to do these.
Thank you, guys. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
everybody.
it, and excited to see where Ava Labs and Avalanche goes.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.